You open your eyes, and you're in medieval Europe. Before you get excited, no, you're not a king. You're not a knight. You're definitely not the mysterious handsome prince from the movie. You're a peasant. And congratulations, you have a house. Technically, it's one room. That's it. One room has to be your bedroom, kitchen, living room, storage room, workshop, and occasionally, animal shelter. Because yes, some of your animals may be sleeping inside too. A chicken, a goat, maybe a pig. Anything that produces heat is welcome. Privacy? Forget it. Your parents are here. Your siblings are here. Your children are here. And there's probably some relative who was supposed to stay for 3 days and has somehow been here for 6 years. You take one step forward. Dust rises from the floor. Because the floor isn't wood. It isn't tile. It isn't even particularly interested in being clean. It's dirt. Actual dirt. Every person walking around stirs more of it into the air you're breathing. The windows aren't glass. They're wooden shutters. They keep out some rain, some wind, occasionally an ambitious chicken. And that's about it. So during winter, cold air comes in. During summer, flies come in. And at night, all the heat you've spent the day collecting escapes through the same gaps. Your bed isn't exactly luxurious either. It's usually some form of straw bedding. You lie down. Something moves. You assume it's the straw. It isn't. Congratulations. You've just met your bed's permanent residents. Fleas. Lice. Possibly other insects you have absolutely no interest in identifying. And every morning, you wake up feeling like you've spent 8 hours sleeping on a sack of gardening tools. But at least you're warm. Because someone has lit the fire. Unfortunately, the fire is inside the house. There may be little or no proper chimney. Smoke fills the room before eventually finding its way outside through whatever opening it can negotiate. So you're breathing smoke. Every day. From childhood. Your eyes burn. Your clothes smell like fire. Your hair smells like fire. The entire house smells like a combination of smoke, animals, damp clothing, food, and approximately every human being you've ever met. And this is before breakfast. Speaking of which, you're hungry. Good news. Breakfast exists. Bad news. Breakfast is pottage. What's pottage? Imagine a thick stew. Now imagine you don't make a completely new stew every morning. You simply keep adding things. Grain, peas, roots, vegetables, whatever is available. Yesterday's leftovers, today's leftovers. Something that has been sitting around long enough that nobody remembers whose idea it was. Pottage was a common staple in medieval Europe, particularly among poorer households, because it was cheap, flexible, and could turn whatever ingredients you had into something edible. And that's the key word. Edible. Not delicious. Edible. You get a piece of bread too. It's dense, hard, chewy. And depending on the grain and quality, it may be nothing like the soft bread you're imagining. You dunk it into the stew. Wait. Soften it. Hope your teeth survive. And occasionally, the problem wasn't the bread. It was the grain. Rye could become contaminated with a fungus known as ergot, which could cause serious poisoning and neurological symptoms. So imagine being hungry and discovering that your breakfast may have come with hallucinations. But food isn't actually your biggest problem. It's what you're going to drink. You reach for water, and someone stops you. Why? Because clean drinking water isn't guaranteed. Medieval people absolutely drank water. That's important. The idea that everyone avoided water and drank beer all day is an exaggeration. But contaminated water was a serious problem in many crowded settlements, especially where waste disposal was poor. And that brings us to your next decision. Water or something fermented. Low-alcohol small beer was common in parts of medieval Europe, and brewing could make the drink safer than untreated water in certain circumstances because heating and fermentation reduced some microbial risks. It wasn't necessarily the strong beer you're imagining. You weren't waking up at 6 in the morning and immediately getting drunk. You were drinking a weak, fermented beverage. Still, it's an interesting way to start the day. And then, about 20 minutes later, your stomach makes a decision for you. At first, it's just a rumble. Then another. Then suddenly your stomach feels like somebody has reached inside it and grabbed something. You need a bathroom. There isn't one. You look around. Nothing. No porcelain toilet. No private bathroom. No little room where you can lock the door and contemplate your life choices. You have options. And none of them are good. Maybe there's a chamber pot or bucket. Maybe you go outside. And if you're in a crowded settlement, the outside option comes with its own problem. Everyone else has been doing the same thing. Human waste. Animal waste, rotting food, mud, rainwater, everything starts mixing. And when waste disposal is poorly managed, streets can become filthy very quickly. You step outside, the smell hits you, and it isn't subtle. You have spent your entire life around this smell. You probably don't even react to it anymore. But the real problem isn't your nose. It's what can enter your body. Contaminated water can spread diseases such as dysentery and typhoid. Parasites can become a recurring part of life. People can be sick so frequently that illness begins to feel less like an emergency and more like background noise. And here's the terrifying thing. For centuries, people could see the sickness. They just didn't understand the chain connecting the waste to the water, to the disease. You get sick. You don't know why. So naturally, you visit the doctor. Except there's another problem. You probably don't have a doctor. Not the kind you're imagining. Medical practitioners existed. Universities existed. Physicians existed. But access depended heavily on where you lived and how much money you had. So for ordinary people, treatment might come from someone much closer to home. A barber, a healer, an apothecary. Someone who had learned a mixture of traditional knowledge, practical experience, and whatever medical theory happened to be accepted at the time. And one of the biggest ideas in medieval medicine was the theory of four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. The theory went back to ancient Greek medicine and remained influential for centuries. If those humors became unbalanced, you became ill. And the solution could be remarkably simple. Remove something. Usually, blood. You sit down. Someone ties your arm. A blade appears. And suddenly your treatment plan involves losing blood while you're already feeling terrible. Bloodletting was used for centuries for a wide variety of conditions, although the effectiveness depended entirely on what illness was actually being treated. And if that didn't work, leeches. Yes, tiny blood-sucking worms. They were used medically for a very long time. And if neither the bloodletting nor the leeches solved the problem, well, there was always prayer. Because when your medicine can't explain the illness, something else has to. And sometimes that something else was supernatural, which is when your terrible day gets much worse. Someone whispers a word. Witch. You laugh. Nobody else does. Because depending on the place and period, accusations of harmful magic could have extremely serious consequences. But let's be careful here. The popular image of medieval Europe burning millions of witches isn't accurate. The major European witch hunts peaked much later, especially during the 16th and 17th centuries, not throughout the entire Middle Ages. Still, accusations of witchcraft did happen, and they could destroy lives. Imagine your neighbor's cow dies. Someone becomes sick. The harvest fails. A child develops a fever. People want an explanation, and when medicine can't provide one, they may look for someone to blame. Maybe it's the strange woman who knows too much about herbs. Maybe it's the old man everyone already dislikes. Maybe it's simply the person who had an argument with the wrong neighbor. Once suspicion begins, logic becomes optional, and accusations can grow faster than evidence. Some societies even used forms of trial by ordeal, based on the belief that divine judgment would reveal guilt or innocence. One famous example involved water. A person could be bound and thrown into water. If they sank, they might be considered innocent. Unfortunately, they were also drowning. If they floated, that could be interpreted as evidence of guilt. So you have discovered the world's least useful swimming test. But here's the part that should really stay with you. You started this morning with a dirt floor. You slept beside insects. You breathed smoke. You ate coarse food. You worried about contaminated water. You had limited access to medical care. And somehow, this was ordinary life for millions of people. Not one terrible day. Not an unusual survival challenge. Life. Year after year. Generation after generation. And yet they still raised children. They built homes. They grew food. They fell in love. They celebrated weddings. They told jokes. They went to markets. They complained about their neighbors. They worried about money. They worried about weather. They worried about their children. In other words, they lived. And that's probably the most important thing to remember. When you look backward at history, it's easy to imagine your ancestors as people permanently trapped inside misery. They weren't. They didn't wake up every morning thinking, wow, life is absolutely horrible. This was their normal. Humans are remarkably good at adapting to whatever becomes ordinary. The dirt floor becomes normal. The smoke becomes normal. The smell becomes normal. The lack of privacy becomes normal. Even the insects become normal. And then you look at your own life. You wake up on a mattress. You turn on a light. Water comes from a tap. You flush a toilet. You open a refrigerator. You take medicine when you're sick. You close a door when you want privacy. You complain when the Wi-Fi is slow. Your medieval ancestor would probably look at your life and assume you were royalty. And honestly, they wouldn't be completely wrong. So the next time you complain because your shower takes 30 seconds to heat up, remember the person who had to walk outside into freezing weather to empty a bucket. The next time your bed feels uncomfortable, remember the straw mattress. The next time dinner is boring, remember the pottage. And the next time you think modern life is difficult, remember that somewhere in your family tree is a person who survived a world without antibiotics, refrigeration, central heating, clean plumbing, or a mattress that doesn't contain insects. They didn't have the comforts you take for granted. They had something else, adaptation. And somehow, they survived long enough to produce you. So thank your ancestors. Not because their lives were perfect, but because they endured a world that would probably break you in a week and somehow made it ordinary. Every comfort you have today exists because someone before you lived without it.